I'm so thankful for Greg Massey right now. That was a great introduction. I hope in some way in the next shorter than 20 minutes, Rand tells me, that I have a chance to touch you and change the way in which your life occurs for you. The title of this talk is Being in Time. We're going to take a look at our being, and we're going to take some time to have some special attention paid to what is time. This is a profound privilege to me to speak to you because I am so passionate about the future. I'm passionate about our future for human beings on the planet, and I'm passionate about the future for each of your organizations and for each of you individually. Today, we're going to go on a journey, and we're going to consider time. We're going to deeply get into the notion of time. And together, we're going to start to disrupt some of our commonly held notions about it. And by the end of the talk, my hope is that we've opened up a space and made it clear that each one of you can grab a hold of and create a future that's bigger than you ever thought you could. I'm going to start the talk with a clip from a forthcoming movie that I've just directed called We Rise Up. In it, you're going to see some people that have an extraordinary relationship to time. I'm very grateful to them for bringing their wisdom to the film and to you guys today. And I also want you to notice how they are about the long arc of time. Their sense of gratitude and awe and wonder about the time we live in. If after this talk you would like to see more of the movie, it's not been released yet. If you'll get a hold of me, I'll give you a card and I'll send you a link to it so you can watch the whole film. So I want you to notice in this clip the extraordinary relationship these people have to time.
We're the first generation to be conscious of evolution, to be conscious we're affecting our own evolution. The universal process of creation is coded with the idea of create more conscious life. Our sequence is a continual rise of complexity and consciousness. And now that process has become self-aware, it has been, is now evolving, and we are part of the evolution.
As we become more conscious, as we begin to take responsibility for our own evolution, it's not completely happening outside us any longer through ecological variances and ecological pressures, but we begin to take responsibility. We begin to consciously evolve. And once you become aware of that, you're in a position to accelerate your own evolution and also the evolution of other people. And then as a critical mass become conscious of it, it begins to, again, elevate and lift up.
The choices you and I make will impact the future of life for the next 1,000 years. Rather than that being a burden for our time, it ennobles our lives. It gives us the opportunity to live the most meaningful lives any generation of humankind has ever lived.
Conscious evolution, 1,000 years. This is a different view of time than our commonly held view. You see, while we exist in time, we don't really understand time, know time, or even have very good models for working with time. We're like a fish in water or a bird in the air. We're surrounded by time, but we don't know how to be in time powerfully. There's a before, there's a will be, and there's a now. But beyond these basics, most of us have never really thought much about time. The past stretches out behind us, leaving a trail of memories. We have stories of our childhood, our time in school, our career. We remember and tell stories about things that happened earlier this year, this month, this week. Stories about what happened this morning. And while we can change our stories about the past, we cannot change the past. We can't get our hands on it. It's just not available to us. So all we really have about the past is our story about the past. The future isn't much different. We can't get our hands on it either. And much like the past, the only thing that we have about the future is our stories about the future. When I grow up, I'm going to be. We're going to crush the competition in quarter 3. Everything will be better when. You see, all we have about the future is our stories about the future. What about now? In every minute, something is happening for us. And we experience a sensation, a thought, an emotion, maybe a perception of the world around us. That is the instant now. And it goes by instant, now, and now, and now. And as each instant passes, it's in the past. And the only thing we have to hold on to about that instant is the story of what happened. Neuroscience tells us a lot about the instant now in the brain. You see, we have an experience, a sensation, some sensory input, and we have the experience that it's instantaneous and unmediated. In other words, there's nothing between us and the instant now and our experience of the now. That's just the way it is for us. But in the brain, that's not the way it is. Functional MRIs show that we lag about a half a second behind the moment that we have a sensory input before we become aware. I'll say it again. It's about a half a second between the moment our brain receives a sensory input and we become aware of it. That's the instant now, and it's happening now, and now, and now, and we're lagging behind. Yet life seems continuous. That's due to our brain's ability to stitch all these instant nows together into what we call the ongoing now. This is why we experience a film as being continuous, and it's made up of 24 frames a second. If we were to experience that film image by image, we would not experience a film. We would just see a series of pictures. You see, we're able to stitch together the nows to make a story about now. In fact, as we can never have a direct experience of the instant now, we can only have an experience of the ongoing now, the story we tell ourselves about now a half second after it happens. So the only thing we really have about the now is our story about the now. And this is the story that we live in. I hope that doesn't leave you feeling diminished or small, because story is our superpower. It is a fundamental part of our consciousness and our ability to express ourselves. And while we may never experience the instant now, we can experience through story the long arc of time. Now that we've kind of gotten a little groundwork about what time is for us, I'd like to give you a direct experience of that long arc. I'm going to lead you on a short guided meditation. So if you would get comfortable and close your eyes. Now bring your attention to your breath and take a long, slow inhale. And exhale. Feel your feet on the ground, the pressure of the chair against your body. Think back to the exercise from last night about your ancestors. And once again, imagine your parents standing behind you. Maybe, if they were inclined to do so, they each have a hand on one of your shoulders. Be with them for a moment. And once again, imagine their parents behind them, your grandparents. Now imagine your great-grandparents behind them and their parents. We are now 4 generations back. And this is the point where we lose all practical memory of our ancestors. Take a moment and consider their lives. What did they go through? How did they live? What did they have to do to raise children and leave the legacy that created you? And now we're going to go back in time. You won't be able to clearly see beyond this point, so just consider and hold your ancestors as we go back 5 generations, and to their parents 6 generations back, 7, 8 generations. We are now 200 years in the past, continuing 9, 10 generations, the founders of our nation. Just acknowledge all that they gave us in our lives. And now we're going to take a big leap and go back 15 generations, each one standing behind the other in a chain leading up to you. Now 20, 21, 22 generations back. Now we're in the time of the Renaissance, and Michelangelo carving David from stone 515 years ago. Think about the artists, merchants, bankers, and scientists of the Enlightenment, and how everything we have built in the West stands on their shoulders. From here, it's just a small jump back to the pinnacle of the Roman Empire, 306 AD, then the Emperor Constantine, 71 generations back. And now back down the line of Roman emperors to the time of Augustus and his father Julius Caesar, 82 and 83 generations back. 84 generations back, and we're at the time of Christ. Let's take just a few more steps to 100 generations back. We've arrived nearly 2,500 years in the past, and we're standing on the footsteps of Plato's Academy. Now take a moment and hold 100 generations of your ancestors in your consciousness, each generation standing behind the prior one. Don't worry if you're getting this right. Let it be in a place of wonder, like a sunset or a newborn child. Soak in the gifts that have been given to us by all those who came before you. Now take one deep breath. And we'll slowly come back through the generations, 100, 75, 50, 25, 10, 5 generations, and now back to the present moment. Keep your ancestors behind you, standing with you and for you. Now imagine your children in front of you, facing away from you, so you are at their backs. It's okay if you don't have children. If you intend to have them, imagine them. If you don't intend to have children, borrow your nieces and nephews, the children of a friend. And feel the fierce love we have for our children. Consider all the intentions you wrote yesterday, the ones that are being written on the long arc of time this moment. Consider the gifts that you wrote down. Consider the gifts that you would like to pass forward to them in the future. Now imagine your children's children, your grandchildren. Picture them having your gift. See your great-great-grandchildren before you. Your great-great-great-grandchildren, 4 generations of the future. This is about as much as most of us can imagine. But we are adventurers, so let's go on out from here and imagine their children and their children's children, 6 generations. At 2 children per generation, we are now about 200 years forward, and we have 64 direct descendants. Let's go forward 7, 8, 9, 10 generations, 300 years into the future. 11, 12, 14. We are now 420 years into the future, about the same distance as the Renaissance in our past. Let's move forward 15, 20 generations. Hold those 20 generations in your consciousness. See them stretching out, one generation after the other, lined up in front of you. And think about your gifts being handed down generation to generation, to the 20th generation. Now see your gifts 30 generations out, 40, 50, 75 generations. See your gifts in the hands of your descendants 100 generations out. We are now 2,500 years into the future. Feel 100 generations of ancestors behind you. See 100 generations before you, the beneficiaries of your gifts. Now take a long, slow breath. And we'll slowly come back 100 generations, 70 generations, 50, 25, 10, 5, and back to now. Open your eyes when you're ready. Welcome back. Now everybody hold their hands out like this. Look to your left hand, and then look to your right hand. You're holding a 5,000-year arc of time. It's incredible that we can do that as human beings. That's an incredible gift that we have, the ability to imagine and hold time like that. There's one more powerful aspect about time that I want to talk to you guys about, and that's the aspect of time that shapes our actions. Look at this boat. It goes across the water and it leaves a wake. And the wake lets us know where the boat has been. Likewise, our past and our stories about the past let us know what we have done. But when you look at that boat, is it the wake that steers the boat? Or maybe more accurately, is it the wake that determines the direction of the boat? No, that's the driver. In this case, you. And the same could be said about our past. Our past doesn't determine our direction. You see, the past is something that we have a superstition about. We have the superstition that our past has us do what we do and has us be who we are. But the wake doesn't steer the boat. So where are we steering the boat? Towards the destination we're focused on, right? The past is in the past, a record of all that we've done, and the future is the destination we're heading towards. And to steer the boat effectively, there's certain things we have to do. There's certain actions we have to take to reach the destination. You can't get the boat to reach the destination without driving the boat. And in order to drive the boat, there are certain qualities of being we have to have. Maybe we have to be focused, clear, resourced. In some cases, we have to be courageous to steer the boat to the destination. You see, you have to be the person who can reach the destination to reach the destination. I'll say that again. You have to be the person who can reach the destination to reach the destination. So what future are we steering towards? And what impact does that future have on what we do and who we are? You might say that the future itself determines what we do and who we are. I'm going to give you an example of that. Take a look at this island. Imagine you're on your boat and you're going on vacation. You know, beaches, tiki bars, little umbrellas in your drinks. How do you feel? Like, excited, let's go. When do I pack my bags? Where's my ticket? I'm going to take you back on your boat and imagine a slightly different future. Let's say you're on your boat and you're heading towards the island, but instead of a vacation, you're going to the funeral of a very dear friend. She passed away suddenly, and you've been asked to give a eulogy. You can't imagine speaking to the family of your friend, much less speaking at the funeral. So how do you feel now? Overwhelmed. Heartbroken, maybe. You see, the future we're living towards has an impact on who we are. It shapes us. It changes us and alters us. And even if you have habitual ways about being on vacations or at funerals, putting a funeral or a vacation in front of you, it makes a very different experience for your life. It shapes the quality of our life. Our future orients us and gives us a direction. And if it does that, then what kinds of futures are you creating? And how are they impacting who you are and what you do? To get to the root to that, there are two kinds of futures, and I'll say them briefly. There's a predictive future that we've all done based upon our analysis of the current circumstances, and every leader in this room has done that to run their business. There's a second kind of future called a generative future, and that future is based upon a discontinuous leap, a future that wasn't going to happen anyway. And a generative future often looks improbable or impossible. I'll give you an example. This is JFK giving his famous moon speech. Let me let you listen in to what he said. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. He says that we have to fly over 240,000 miles to get there. We have to invent material sciences that we've never known before. See, JFK knew that we didn't have the technology or the know-how to get to the moon. He had some urgency to get there, but he knew that we did not know how to get there, and we did not know how to get there and get back, and we did not know what we needed to know to get it done, and all he could do is declare a future. He declared a future that oriented us and challenged us to become the people who could deliver on that future. 6 years, 10 months, and 13 days later, Apollo 11 landed on the moon. 400,000 people at NASA and 20,000 aerospace companies, an entire nation, made the impossible possible. Think about that. I say it's time for us to learn to invent futures, both predictive futures that are near term and generative futures that are long term. It's time to be like my friend Greg Massey, who just did a future search with his stakeholders and is looking for a 10 to 100 year future for himself and his organization. You see, we can all invent powerful futures. We can all orient ourselves towards things that change ourselves and our organizations. We just have to practice. This is what we do at the Generative Future Initiative, is figure out how to create these long-term futures. I invite you to talk to me about it another time. And finally, I want you to take a look at this. This is the Earth photograph from Apollo 11 on December 21st, 1968, just about 51 years ago today. It's the very first time we saw our home from space. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for this photo and the opportunity for our nation to be the nation that delivered on that generative future. And I want you all to just imagine saying, we choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because that will be easy, but because it will be hard. Thank you.